Power Pose Nutrition is a company that I started at the end of last year. I started it because I manage the gym here, CrossFit Orville, as well as Zephyrs Fitness. And I saw a lot of people come in and day out, and they worked so hard in the gym, but they weren't getting the physique results that they were looking for. And I knew what the problem was, and I knew what the answer was. I just didn't have anything set in stone. And so I decided to start this company kind of as an offshoot of the two gyms to provide one-on-one coaching for people. So we are an online company. We work with people locally, but we also work with people all across the world. All of our coaching is done virtually, and it's very specific to the client. So we focus on their energy needs, their lifestyle, their exercise routines, and figure out how much food they should be eating to support those goals.
And I'm Andrea Wagner. I'm the assistant coach for Power Pose Nutrition, and I am a certified nutrition coach and certified personal trainer as well. I'm super excited about all of the topics that we're really going to be going over today, just because kind of going through life, talking to family, friends, clients, potential clients, I hear a lot of statements similar to what you'll hear today. So I'm just really excited to spend the time talking, educating, and learning together.
Okay, so what exactly are we going to cover in today's presentation? So we are going to go through a series of statements that we've heard, you've probably heard, maybe you've even said before, and decide together if they're true or false. And truly, the reason why we even stumbled across this topic and this presentation itself is because I think the most impactful thing for people is to get knowledge, get understanding, to then better advocate for themselves. And so that's my hope, is that you leave here maybe with some myths busted of your own, but even more so information and knowledge that you can use in your everyday life, maybe even in your own life, your coworkers' lives, talking to family or friends. Just really important to have that knowledge and understanding, because truly we are our best advocates. And then, of course, I think we need to mention all of these statements apply to the majority of the population. And when I say majority, I do mean like almost every single person. So you can't use that as a cop-out. More than likely, these statements do apply to you, but certainly it is important to call out that those maybe with medical situations or other complications, these statements may not hold true for them.
Okay, so we've been doing these seminars quarterly ever since January. So if you attended our first one back in January, then the slide probably looks similar because we used this chart during that presentation. But if not, we'll kind of talk through it. So basically, we work with clients with all sorts of different types of goals. So people will come to us wanting to lose weight, gain weight, build muscle, have more energy throughout the day, improve their performance in the gym, have a better relationship with food. And really all of these different things, people come to a nutrition coach expecting to talk about nutrition, and we absolutely do talk about that a lot. We also talk about exercise, which again, fitness and nutrition, people, think about that when they think about like a health and wellness journey. But what a lot of people don't think about are the other areas of that pie chart that you see. So things like water, sleep, stress management, movement throughout the day. So throughout this presentation, we're really going to be honing in on each piece of this pie and busting myths that are associated with them.
So the first topic that we are going to cover today is exercise. So the first statement is, the calories burned number on my watch is actually how many calories I've burned that day, and therefore a good number to base my eating. People are smiling. So is that true or false? I won't even make you say, it's okay, we're here to learn whether it's true or false. So the answer is false. And the reason why your watch is unable to tell you how many calories you've burned in a day, how many calories you burned in your workout, really anything about caloric intake, is because there are far more factors that go into calories in, calories out, your caloric intake, than what your watch can provide. So your watch knows your height, probably, maybe your weight, and your age, okay? But in order to appropriately set calories, to understand what your body needs, you need far more than that. You need your height, you need your weight, you need your age. Yeah, those things help, but so does your past dieting history, how you train, your current lifestyle, your level of stress, your family situation, where you're living, and more. So your watch does not know that about you, and therefore is very unable to give you an accurate reflection of how many calories you've burned, which a lot of people then use to figure out how many calories they should eat. So a personal example is I wear an Apple Watch, and I was just curious one day. So I took an average of how many calories my watch tells me I burn, and it was 1,700. Okay, cool. I actually eat over 2,000 calories in a day just to maintain my weight. So not to gain, not to lose, just to live. So if I was following my watch, which tells me I should have 1,700 calories to live, I would be in a pretty considerable deficit, which would mean over a period of time, my hormone health would suffer, my internal health would suffer, I would be a very hangry person all the time, and things like those situations would come because I was under eating. And so I think it's important even for yourself to check out what your watch is telling you and consider reevaluating, because for me, 1,700 calories is a far difference from what I typically eat just to maintain.
Okay, so the next statement that we have is doing crunches or sit-ups regularly is the best way to tone your stomach. So this one is also a myth, so it's false. And the reasoning behind that, so if you've ever gained weight, lost weight throughout your life, then you know when you gain weight, you don't get to pick where you gain the weight. Your body, just how you are genetically set up, determines where you gain weight. The exact same thing happens when you lose weight. So just because you're doing an exercise that targets your stomach doesn't mean that you're going to lose weight from your stomach. So just like you can't pick where you gain weight, you can't pick where you lose weight as well. So the two things really needed in order to tone a particular area of your body, so if you're looking to tone your stomach or your back or arms or whatever it is, the two things that you really need to utilize is first, resistance training or weightlifting. So in order to have that toned look, you have to have muscle underneath to have that toned look. So resistance training or weight training is going to help build that muscle in the first place. And then most people need a caloric deficit in order to reveal that muscle. So within our bodies, we've got our skin, fat, and then muscle. So if you want to show that muscle through, a calorie deficit will help lose fat so that muscle really shines through. So those are the two things really needed to help tone particular areas of your body.
So the next statement, since I'm a woman, I should lift lighter weight and do more reps so I don't get bulky. Okay, true or false? That is false. And the reason is similar to what Andrea just said. When we actually lift weights, resistance train, put ourselves through what's called progressive overload, which means you're consistently pushing the boundaries that your muscles can handle, a lot of really good things happen. And you have to work really hard. I'm talking like professional athlete status, really hard to actually become a bulky woman. So none of you, no offense, will be that. And including Andrew and I standing up here. So you have to work extremely hard and very specific to actually become bulky. So that's really an irrelevant thought. Instead, what happens when you build muscle and weight train and resistance train really hard is these things right here. So you get a tighter body, a firmer body. You get to eat more. That's awesome. You get to improve your function. You look better. You're more athletic. All of those things happen when you lift weights and exercise via resistance training. The other thing that's really important is as we age, our muscles, we lose muscle, okay? So it's kind of like if you don't use it, you'll lose it. And that's really what happens as we grow older. And so it's really important that we maintain as much as we can, or even grow as much as we can while we can, because as we grow older, we do start to lose function and we do start to lose muscle capability, okay? And I think what's really an example of this is if you have grandparents or parents in your life who walk like this, hunched over, their shoulders are rounded. They didn't just wake up with rounded shoulders. No, they stopped practicing movements that brought their shoulder blades together. They stopped practicing core building exercises. So suddenly they're losing muscle in those areas and starting to become this person, which they didn't just wake up and become. Okay, so it's thinking about the future, even as a 20-year-old, that building these muscles now can impact myself in the future. And if you're in your 40s or your 50s or your 60s, your future as well, in your 70s and your 80s, you can really put off some of that, those things that come with age by building muscles now.
Okay, so now our next statement is doing a lot of cardio is the best way to lose weight. So this one is also false if you aren't catching on a trend yet. So let's talk through what people think leads to fat loss and what actually leads to fat loss. So a lot of people, if just in the world, believe that to lose fat, you've got to do a ton of cardio. So that could look like walking, running, using the treadmill, elliptical, Stairmaster, anything along those lines. Doing, circuit-style workouts like Lexi just described with the lightweight, high reps. Anything that gets like your heart pumping and sweating. A lot of people associate like sweating, like I didn't get a good workout if I didn't sweat a bunch. And those things are not what lead to fat loss. What actually leads to fat loss is a healthy mixture of cardio and resistance training. So cardio does have a lot of benefits. We're not saying don't do any cardio, but combining it with resistance training is really like the magical formula there. So let's take a look at an example on why that is. So if I take a person and have them one day do an hour of cardio and then another day have them do an hour of resistance training, let's talk about the differences that they experience with those 2 days. So with cardio, if you're looking at just that one single hour, if you just isolate it to that hour that they're working out, you do burn more calories typically in a cardio workout in that specific hour than you would compared to like a resistance training session. But what differs between resistance training and cardio is what happens after the workout. So when you work out, your metabolism increases. You burn more calories, basically. Well, when you stop a cardio workout, within 15 minutes, your metabolism slows back down to your normal, like, metabolic rate within 15 minutes. So after 15 minutes, you're back to normal. Well, with resistance training or weight training, your metabolism actually remains elevated anywhere for 24 to 72 hours afterwards. So you keep burning calories from your resistance training workout for up to 3 days later. And this is known as the EPOC effect, which is basically talking about how that whole process of how you burn calories afterwards. And that happens because when you resistance train, you break down your muscles. That might sound like a bad thing, but it's not. Because when we break down our muscles, our body then gets to go in and repair and rebuild them and make them stronger. And so that process of repairing and rebuilding takes a lot of energy and calories, which is why you continue to burn calories afterwards. The other thing with this too is that, so just I guess to summarize that, is with a cardio session versus a weightlifting session, even though you burn more calories just in that hour of cardio, overall you're going to burn more calories from a resistance training workout. The other important thing to talk about is the difference between fat loss and weight loss. So in cardio, you're going to see weight loss, and that weight could either come from fat or muscle or both. So you're going to lose fat and muscle. And Lexi just talked about a bunch of reasons about why we don't want to lose muscle. So really pairing that with resistance training, which is going to fuel weight loss and gaining muscle, is really a perfect combination.
Okay, so that concludes our exercise section. If anybody has a question, comment, concern, we'll field them now or we can field them at the end. If not, we're going to move into our next section, which is movement. So again, we are going to hit all of these sections because this is what encompasses a very well person. Okay, so movement is included. And movement is different than exercise, as you'll see. So this statement is, since I work out every day, I don't have to worry about being active throughout the rest of the day. It's false, if you haven't figured it out yet. All right, the reason why this is false is because what you get to eat is based on how much you move, essentially, and a few other things. So I'm going to go into everything that is based upon how much energy you burn or expend in a day. So TDEE stands for total daily energy expenditure. So in layman's terms, it's basically how much food you get to eat. Okay, I'm also going to go through in layman's terms what those other letters stand for. So how much you get to eat in a day is equal to the energy that you need for vital functions, the energy you need to burn food, the energy you need for exercise, and the energy you need for an active lifestyle. So active lifestyle is where movement comes into play. So we encourage our clients to get somewhere in the range of 7 to 8,000, 10,000 steps. So 7 to 10,000 steps a day. And the reason why we do that is that contributes to a very well person. In addition to that, that contributes to how much energy they're expending in a day. Okay, so we encourage them to do so, and by getting their steps, they're maybe grocery shopping, they're doing housework, maybe they are going on a walk, they're playing with their kids. Anything that gets them moving or making those more well decisions, parking further away in the parking lot or whatever, will contribute to how much food and how much movement they get, which is really beneficial for somebody that's looking to live a well and healthy lifestyle.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to sleep. So our first statement here is some people need as little as 5 hours of sleep per night. I get a lot of people who come to work with me that get 5 to 6 hours of sleep at night, and I don't know how they function. This is false. So you'll hear a lot of people, or you'll hear the comment like, I'll sleep, sleep is overrated, I'll sleep when I'm dead. And that is definitely not a good motto to follow. So the recommended amount of sleep is 7 to 9 hours of uninterrupted sleep per night. So that's consecutive 7 to 9 hours, not broken up into chunks. And when it comes, obviously, to like your career and things like that, there's some people who can't make that happen. So in that scenario, you just do the best that you can, get as much sleep as you can get. But the most people are able to get 7 to 9 hours if you prioritize correctly. And when we're talking about sleep, it's really important to get good sleep. And good sleep is getting enough sleep, that 7 to 9 hours, and getting good quality sleep. So quality is just as important as quantity when it comes to sleep. And sleep is really important because it impacts how we feel physically, emotionally, mentally. So if you're not getting enough sleep, you're going to notice areas, or you notice things in each one of those areas. You might feel tired, not strong in a workout. You might feel like emotionally drained, or like maybe like you're not making rational decisions, or like brain fog. All of those things, if you're not getting enough sleep, you're going to feel those in your day-to-day life. And so when we get good sleep, there's a lot of really good benefits from that. So it can help with fat loss, muscle gain, recovery and repair. It can help regulate things like our blood sugars, our hormones, our hunger and appetite. And it can even boost your immune system. And so the exact same is true for the opposite end of the coin. So if you're not getting enough sleep, if you're not getting 7 to 9 hours, if you're not getting good quality sleep for that 7 to 9 hours, then you're going to experience the exact opposite. So if you're trying to lose weight, it's going to be a lot more difficult. If you're trying to build muscle, it's going to be a lot more difficult. They're going to be difficult because you're not going to be able to properly regulate your blood sugars, your hormones, your appetite, and you're going to be more likely to get sick as well, because again, that can impact your immune system as well.
Okay, so the next section that we're moving into is stress management. This is a good one. Sorry, gave that answer away. Okay, so the statement is, it is normal to reduce stress with food. Okay, this is false. There are a myriad of ways that people manage their stress. So we're going to go through some examples that would be poor ways to manage stress. Eating junk food, holding it in, watching Netflix, drinking alcohol excessively, stress eating excessively, ignoring it, vegging out, hiding in a hole, driving in your car, anything. These are real actually, people have said these things to us. So I'm sure that maybe one or two of these is something that you've done or considered doing in your lifetime. When we're talking about stress, it's very important that we actually take ourselves into a parasympathetic space, okay? And all of these activities are the opposite of that. So when we rely on these activities, we end up being chronically stressed. And when you're in a chronically stressed situation, you start to live in this fight or flight mode. And fight or flight is where, actually similar to what Andrew was talking about with sleep, you can start to have irrational thoughts, make irrational decisions, and start to not cope as well. Furthermore, you have cravings, your metabolism is reduced, you might find yourself having depressing thoughts, Your blood sugar, again, is not managed well, digestion, just a lot of things when you're chronically under stress do not go well. So how do you combat stress? Again, we're talking like daily stress in the workplace, daily stress maybe at home, in your life in some capacity. There are a few examples that we would encourage our clients to practice. So some of them are listed: deep breathing, taking a walk, getting a drink of water, doing what's called brain dumping, and also bringing awareness to the situation. So I'll give you an example, and again, this is not something that should overtake you or you feel like you have to set aside 3 hours in a day to do. I'm just talking about those daily things that come up. Maybe you're prepping for a presentation at work and you find yourself, your heart rate's kind of up and you're maybe like finicking a little bit, and you at least bring awareness like, okay, wow, something like I'm kind of nervous for this. Everybody says, oh, I'm nervous for that. So when you say I'm nervous for that, instead of just blowing by it, instead taking 2 really deep breaths in and out, that can really help you inside come back down, because our bodies don't like to live at a high. If you allow them to come back down, they will. You just have to wait for it, be present for it, and acknowledge it, and you will come back down. So the overarching theme is when we talk about stress management, instead of going and looking at food or some of the bad examples that I gave, Netflix, ignoring it, those sort of things, I would highly encourage you to consider one of these listed and practice that and see what it could do for you.
Okay, so the next one is that for the majority of people, work is their largest stressor. And the answer to this one is false. So a lot of times when we think about stress, we think about things like being really busy or having too many projects or having a deadline that you have to meet. And those are definitely examples of stress. They're all examples of mental stress. But as you can see up on the screen, there's a lot of different types of stressors. So there's mental stressors, physical stressors, social, environmental, emotional, and existential. So there's a lot of different types of stressors, and we get clients that come to us all the time, and one of the questions we ask them is, how is your stress level? And a lot of times we hear people say, oh, I'm not stressed. But then as we talk more and get to know them more, we learn like, oh, they work out 6 to 7 times a week. That's a physical stressor. They work night shift. Also a physical stressor. They're parents. That's stressful. They're just looking at all these different areas. There's so many different ways that our bodies experience stress that we might not perceive as stress. And so just recognizing that stress comes in a lot of different forms, and that impacts like our bodies, even though we might not like mentally feel it as stress, our bodies feel that as stress. And so Lexi just talked about a bunch of reasons why we don't want to live with that chronic stress and ways to manage that in a more healthy way. So just looking at your life and trying to examine, am I actually more stressed than I think I am? What are my stressors, and what are like healthy ways to manage those? Okay, so now we're going to move on to the nutrition section. So the first one we have is carbs are fattening. Hopefully everybody knows that this one is false. So really, when we look at food, all of our food is made up with calories, and those calories are made up of 3 macronutrients: your carbs, fats, and proteins. Over time, carbs have gotten the bad rap of being evil or fattening, or whatever, however you want to describe it. But really, the answer to this is that no individual macronutrient is going to be responsible for weight gain or fat gain. What causes weight gain is when you are in a caloric surplus. So that means that you're eating more calories than you burn in a day. So if somebody burns 2,000 calories in a day and they eat 2,300 calories in a day, they're in a surplus, and that will lead to weight gain. It doesn't matter what obviously for health reasons it matters what their macros are, but in terms of weight gain, it doesn't matter what their macro split is. They could be eating no carbs and still gain weight because they're in a surplus. So again, weight gain is not associated with carbs or a specific macro. It's associated with your caloric intake.
And maybe you're sitting there wondering, like, how do I know how many calories I burn? That is what we do. But also, you could track and figure out how much you eat and see if you gain or lose weight based on that 1 week or 2 week of tracking your food and your exercise. If you have questions about that, we can talk about it later. All right, next statement. Since I overate yesterday, it is a good idea to undereat today. Okay, so that is false for a few reasons. So first of all, our bodies are very smart machines. They are very smart, but they are not as smart maybe as we give them credit for, okay? They like routine. They like to know when food's coming. They like to know that they're gonna get more food after that said meal. They like to do that. They like to get on a cadence, okay? And so when we restrict after maybe a day of overeating, and whether that's a wedding or a graduation party, or hey, you just went out with friends and had fun, when you restrict the next day, it starts to confuse our body. And that can be very disruptive. So again, when it gets food that next day after being restricted, it might say, oh geez, this is the only food I'm getting. Store is fat. Oh geez, this is the only food I'm getting. Hold on, it's weight, okay? Instead, if you're consistent with your dieting, it will start to learn your tendencies and know that it can trust you, which is really a good place to be. The other thing with skipping meals, or I should say undereating, is that it starts to snowball later into the day. And so especially, we see this in female clients, but certainly males are not extinct from this. When we talk about undereating the next day, usually it involves like skipping breakfast. And especially for a woman with hormones that certainly regulate their internal health, that can be very disruptive and harmful to a girl who skips breakfast and lets themselves kind of ride the wave down and then get food later in the day. So skipping breakfast is kind of a common thing. That would be something we would advise against. Additionally, when you skip breakfast, male, female, whatever, you can start to kind of expect some overeating to happen in the evening, okay? So again, our bodies are used to a certain amount of food after training them each day, and so it's really hard to take food away from the body because it's expecting that. And so that's usually when we get into an overeating cycle in the evening because we didn't regulate our metabolism at the beginning of the day. And then lastly, this is just kind of like a golden rule. Using food as a reward or a punishment is not something that promotes health. It's not something that promotes a good mindset around food. And so when you celebrate or restrict by way of food, that can start to really impact how your mind thinks about food and your relationship with food.
Okay, this one should be obvious based on the topic we just talked about. The best way to lose weight is to eat less food. So while this is true for some people, there are a lot of instances where this is not the case. And so the easiest way to explain this is going to be to actually look at some examples of some of our clients. So the first client that I have up on the screen, she started with us back in late March and is still a client. So she's been a client with us for 3.5 months. And when she first started working with us, she was eating about 1,400 calories a day. Over the last 3.5 months, we've increased her calories by 400 calories. So she eats 400 calories a day more, but she's down 27 pounds. So taking away food from her when she was eating 1,400 calories would have just caused a lot of internal stress, damage to her hormones, damage to her metabolism. And in fact, by increasing her calories and giving her more food, we were able to heal a lot of the things that were going on inside and result in weight loss. I'll also show you another example of a client as well. So this client started with us back in January, and she's still a client. She's about to finish up 6 months of coaching. And when she first started working with us, she was eating 1,100 calories a day, which if you don't track your food, that's like nothing. And so over the last 6 months, we've increased her calories by almost 800 calories a day. That's like 1 to 2 meals for a lot of people. So a huge calorie increase. And she is thriving in all areas of life. But when it comes to weight loss, she's down 17 pounds from that. So the exact same example of, by taking away food when she was only eating 1,100 calories, she would have been literally eating nothing and just causing tons of damage inside. Whereas instead, we were able to heal her insides and promote weight loss.
Okay, the next statement. I can't eat anything after 8 p.m. I like this one. It is false. I like this one because I think that it surprises people to know my routine. And so when I share it with people, they ask questions like, oh, wow, you eat that late in the night or in the evening? Or, oh, wow, you don't cut yourself off at a certain time? And the answer is no. And the reason why is we all have 24 hours. So depending on your lifestyle or maybe your job or the shift that you work at your job, your 24 hours can be placed wherever it needs to be. So for some people, a schedule like wake up at 7, eat breakfast at 8, you can see that maybe lunch at 1 o'clock, they're eating dinner at 8, and they're going to bed at 11. That gets them 8 hours of sleep. They've got their meals in, they've got their snacks in. Awesome. For some people, maybe that looks like going to bed at 9 p.m., but waking up at 5 a.m. So same exact hours within the day, just shifted. And so the important part here, though, is you can't be both. You can't be a morning person and an evening person, okay? Because that starts to cramp your time for sleep, rest, recovery, all the good things. But you can be one of them. So you can shift your activities around that 24-hour clock, and there's no issue with that. Our bodies will regulate against that, and if you're consistent, there is no problem. So I am the person that eats dinner around 8, 9 p.m. because of my work schedule, goes to bed around 11, wakes up at 7, and that to me really works. So I've gotten to the consistent pattern and trained myself that those are my 24 hours, and that's how I'm going to use them.
Okay, so the next one is making good food choices, including mostly whole foods, is the best way to lose weight. All right, so you'll notice a theme through these, that when it comes to weight loss, it's all about being in a calorie deficit, a healthy calorie deficit. And so while your food choices and the quality of your food is very important for your internal health, that alone are not going to lead to weight loss. So you need to be in a calorie deficit to lose weight. And let's look at an example of this, because we get clients come to us all the time that say, I eat really healthy, but I can't lose weight. And so here's a perfect example of someone's food that they could eat for a day. So when you look at the screen, you see all of your macronutrients. You see plenty of carbs, plenty of fat, plenty of protein. They're eating regularly throughout the day. There's fruits, veggies, micronutrients, fiber, all the things you need in a day. So this is a great day of good quality food choices. But this food could easily add up to 2,000 calories in a day. And if you're not burning more than 2,000 calories in a day, you will not be in a calorie deficit and therefore will not lose weight. So again, food choices are super important. We work with our clients on that all the time, making good quality food choices because that's good for your insides. But that's not what's going to lead to weight loss in the end. You do need to be in a calorie deficit as well. Okay, so we're moving on to our last section, and that is water. So this one is 0-calorie drinks and other drinks that are mostly water count as water. So the answer to this is false, and there's a few quotes on the bottom of the screen, and you yourself might be guilty of saying these, or maybe you've heard people say these, and I know in my past I have certainly said a few of these things. So some of them are, beer is 95% water, so I'm actually hydrating, or diet soda has 0 calories, so it's basically water. Or coffee is mostly water, so it counts. But the answer is that none of these things actually count as water. So things like beer, soda, coffee, all of those things, while they're fluids, they're not hydrating you. And that's because caffeine and alcohol are what's called a diuretic. And a diuretic is something that flushes water out of your body. So even though you are drinking something that is mostly water, it's actually dehydrating you. It's causing you to lose water equally as fast. So it's not resulting in hydration. So to kind of summarize everything up, like we talked about, all of these pieces of the pie are equally important in a health and fitness journey. So you can't be doing well in half of them or 3 or 4 of them. We really need to be focusing on all of them to be a good, healthy, just functioning, like well-rounded adult. So hopefully by going through some of these myths, you guys learned something about all of these little pieces and parts today. And if you guys have any questions, we're open to those now. Okay, so the question had to do with carbs and talking about, like, are all carbs created equal? So are there good carbs and bad carbs? And this is a great question. So yes, carbs are definitely not created equal. There's a lot of different ways to get carbs. So there's things like fruits, veggies, rice, oatmeal, those types of more like whole food sources. And those we would consider more of like a healthier carb source. And then there's a lot of other carb sources that are going to be more processed. So things like granola bars or cereals or Pop-Tarts or candy. Those are going to be, I don't want to say bad, but just not as nutritious carbs. And so what we really work with our clients on is when it comes to food in general, carbs or not, is just having a balance. And so we try to follow like an 80-20 rule. So 80% of our food should be foods that are like good whole food sources that provide value and nutrition and benefit for our body. And then 20% of our foods are foods that we eat because we just enjoy them. And so we're not saying don't ever eat the bad carbs or only eat the good carbs. It's really just about balance.
Yeah, and I think one thing I would add is it definitely depends what the type of carb that you choose to eat can really be tied to what activity you're doing. So sometimes like post-workout, again, I don't want to say bad carbs, but a quick digesting carb like a Pop-Tart or something of that nature would actually be better than a carbohydrate that we would consider more healthy and a more well-rounded nutrition. What's the word I'm looking for? Like a nutrition template, you could say, because that will be slower digesting and not help us recover as fast. So there's a little bit of, I think, give and take there that people don't quite understand. And in certain cases, it's actually better to have a quicker digesting carb than something that takes a little bit longer to digest. Nutritional profile was the word I was looking for. Good question. So the good carbs, bad carbs, any carbs, are they tracked the same? Are they tracked differently? No, they are tracked the same. Yep. So, a handful of rice is going to have 30 carbs, and a Pop-Tart also has 30 carbs. So, yes, they are tracked the same. What is brain dumping? Okay, brain dumping is an exercise where you take a piece of paper, I guess you could take a phone or an iPad or some place to write things down, and you just write everything that comes into your head. Write it down. A lot of times when people use brain dumping is like right before bed because they're like laying in bed and they're thinking of their to-do list for the next day or what they didn't do that day. And so the act of brain dumping, putting it on a piece of paper, like literally out dumping the brain to the piece of paper, can help them feel free of those thoughts to be able to fall asleep and look at them the next day. The question was, generally speaking, there's people in this world that are cardio bunnies, so 2 hours of cardio, thinking that is going to be more beneficial than maybe a workout that includes cardio, resistance training, and other modalities of fitness for maybe a short amount of time, actually. So I think, how do you overcome that? I think the first thing is like education, and knowledge is power. So I think helping to educate the individual on what Andrea said and kind of reiterating that is literally the science of exercise and how our body exerts energy to exercise shows us that calories are burned through both modalities, cardio and a variety. However, when you do cardio, you're not really tearing down any muscle structures. So therefore, there's really nothing to build back up. And so the reason why a variety, including resistance training or weightlifting, works better is because you're actively tearing those muscle fibers and having to rebuild them. So like in layman's terms, when you're running, it doesn't even matter how long you're running, you're not actually breaking down muscle fibers like you would be in weightlifting. So just so that everybody hears, the world is full of myths. And yes, people swear by that daggone Apple Watch, and they see the calories burn number on there. And the best thing I can say is that's why we did this presentation, because that is scientifically untrue. And so getting over that or accepting that or acknowledging that as the truth is how I think people we can move the needle as an industry, as a population, on what actually does impact health, wellness, and fitness. So yes, she is exactly right. The issue is this watch says X amount of calories after you go for a 2-hour run, the watch says X amount of calories, usually lower when you do a CrossFit workout or when you do your leg day at Zephyrs or another gym. And the fact of the matter is you just can't look at that because that's another myth, like we talked about at the very beginning. Yeah, okay, the question was lifting heavy, specifically in the jungle, that's better than running on the treadmill. Okay, those are very polarizing statements. So as an organization, we try to not go from one end of the spectrum to another. So my answer is everything in moderation is key. So we want to be balanced. This circle here is full of balance. It's not just nutrition and exercise. It's not just exercise, but you can even boil that down even more and say it's not just a certain type of exercise. It's being able to incorporate, again, a variety of modalities for your physical fitness. So that's my answer. It certainly depends on your goals. That's 100% accurate. And even more so if you're training for a competition of sorts. Let's say you're training for a bodybuilding competition. Well, then more than likely you're going to be doing those types of exercise. Or maybe you're training for a half marathon. Well, then more than likely you're going to be training that specifically. Or maybe you do it because you like it. Yeah, those things are, we talked about stressors. If that helps your mental stress, hey, doing something that's fun is outstanding. However, I would just caution people from going too far in one hole, because at the end of the day, you know the people in your life, parent, grandparent, whatever, who have lost function. And so losing function is where we see people in nursing homes, people falling, people in hospitals, those types of things. We want to stay functional. So again, if you can lift things off the shelf, and you laugh now, but there's people in my classes, the people that I train, that they're working on getting better at lifting a blender off the shelf or picking up their Amazon package. So if you can remain functional to the degree that you can at least survive independently, I think you're pushing off the aging process, and I think that's the best thing you can do for yourself.
Okay, so the question had to do with basically like digestion health, metabolism health, and how you plan your food throughout the day. So basically strategy of, do I compress my eating window and eat 2 meals a day or 3 meals a day, or do I do 3 meals a day and snacks? So basically, how do you plan out your food throughout the day best for your health? So this is going to be a little bit different for everyone, and really it's about finding something that works best for you. So there is some truth in the fact of having some window where you don't eat and giving your digestive system a break is healthy. But all of us get that when we go to bed for 8 hours, or you sleep for 8 hours and you eat dinner a few hours before that. So you get 8, 10, 12 hours naturally off of eating just by setting up a healthy lifestyle. And then in terms of just like, do I eat snacks? Do I not? That's really going to come down to a personal preference, what makes you feel the best and what fits into your schedule. Some people in their work, with their profession, their job, they're not able to eat snacks throughout the day. So for them, it's about, I need to eat a really big, solid breakfast to get me through till lunch. So it's about your lifestyle, what makes you feel the best. And then Lexi kind of touched earlier on the comment of like skipping breakfast, and especially for women, how that can impact like your hormone health, and how we wouldn't advise most people to do that.
So the question is, as you get older, and just generally speaking, I think sometimes injuries happen in exercise or in life. And so let's say that you had an injury. How do you balance the rest of the circle, or what do you do to help at least not lose progress during that time period? And I think it's important to actually really lean into the rest of the circle, the things that you can do, while there might be a part of the circle that you currently cannot do. So let's say that you have a shoulder injury. So when you go to exercise, you don't have to like sit on the couch for the next 3 weeks, but you can go to your place of exercise and do a leg exercise maybe, or go for a run or bike ride or some level of activity that's outside of that specific area. But in addition to that, sleeping, getting your nutrition in, managing your stress, really all of the things in this pie chart can actually help to improve that specific injury. So by sleeping, you allow your body time to recover. By eating enough food, protein, carbs, fats, you're giving yourself the correct nutrients to actually go in and heal that area. Same with stress management and the other parts of the circle. So I think that my overarching piece of advice would be doing what you can, and especially if you have a really solid foundation. I preach foundation and habits to my clients a lot. If you have a really solid foundation that's above the average person's function, when you have a little slip up or you have a little injury or something like that, you have such a good foundation and so many chips in the good bucket, if you will, that when you have to take one or two of them out, you're still left with a huge good bucket full of chips. So as much as you can maintain and lean into the whole circle, even when one or two off-putting things comes up, you can still make progress. And that's really the best place to be, is being able to make progress while one or two or a handful of things are down. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. If you think of something, you can reach out to us. We're pretty active on social media, so those are our Instagram handles, and you can find us also on Facebook. So if you think of something when you go home or later this week, we love answering questions. Please feel free to reach out. We would be more than happy to assist you. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend.